Hello and welcome to 11FS FinTech Insider Spotlight. I'm David Barton-Grimley, FinTech Strategy Director at 11FS. In this show, we shine a spotlight on the best and the brightest in the tech and financial services industry to get to know them, their businesses, and what they think the future of the industry will look like. On today's Spotlight, I'm delighted to be joined by two fantastic guests from two associated companies at this very special embedded finance and proptech event at the fantastic Level 39 in London, which holds a special place in 11FS hearts as we began in L39 and held some of our events here too over the years. I'm joined today by Adam Moulson, CCO of Griffin, and Garrett Foxon, CEO of LettsPay. How are you both doing today?
Very good, thank you, David.
Very well, thank you.
Awesome. Right, let's get into it. On today's show, we're going to talk about these two companies, how you both work together, and the proptech landscape in the UK, regulatory change, and where improvements still need to be made for the end consumer. So let's get into it. Adam, perhaps you can start us off. How did you come to work together? What's Griffin's interest in the proptech sector?
Yeah, so Griffin, as you may know, got a banking license earlier this year in March after a lot of work. And our whole focus is about bringing value to real industry problems. So we search out and look for and listen for industry problems. We actually got introduced to Garrett from LettsPay via a mutual connection. And we didn't know each other up until that point. And this person thought maybe we should have a chat. And as a result of that, I would say it probably took about 2 or 3 months for the team at Griffin to learn that there is a problem here. It's pretty widespread throughout the UK market. And it's an area that we should dig into a bit more. And from that became a partnership and all the work that we're doing together.
Brilliant. And Garrett, so what are those problems solved by proptech and your company in particular?
So LettsPay's been going for 4 years now, and we identified the problem of client accounting within the lettings industry. So letting agents who collect rent for their landlords comes into a pooled account and moves out. Now, various regulations have come in and said that needs to be a separate account within the bank. And we thought, well, we can automate that. And we built an automation solution.
And what is the solution that you're providing that a traditional financial provider can't provide?
Within client accounting, within the industry, there's 2 layers to it. So you've got the accounting, so the reconciliation to identify who the tenant's paid or not and moved into arrears, and then you move it on to the landlords.
Yeah.
And then you've got the banking layer underneath that actually moves the transactions of the funds. Now, within the industry, there have been 2 very separate tiers for years. Letting agents have had to download CSV files from their bank accounts, upload that into their accounting software, and then mark off who's paid what, and then identify. And they do that on a daily basis. So with our integrations, we've identified that we can do real-time notifications. So the letting agent knows exactly when a tenant has paid their rent, and they can move it immediately to the landlord.
So it's quite a lot of manual reconciliations.
Huge amount of manual work.
Costs a lot of money for letting agents to manage. So
admin teams. And then fraught with errors, all manual errors.
Yeah. Which probably results in maybe a negative outcome to the customer as well, the end customer, I suppose, in the flow.
Yeah.
And what does the partnership with Griffin allow you to do? What's new? What's changed?
So we had this built LettsPay for 4 years. We built it on top of an EMI originally because there wasn't a banking partner out there. And then through various directives, they identified that EMIs are not appropriate for holding clients' funds. And that was identified in January. So then we went out to the market to identify, is there a bank that offers the same technical functionalities and embedded finance? Because what we want is the accounting and the banking to be heavily embedded, to be one platform for the letting agents to use. And we identified Griffin as the perfect partner.
Fantastic. It'd be great to deep dive a little bit into the regulatory change, because this is a big change, right? From EMIs into becoming almost like a proper bank and needing a proper bank behind it. Can you tell us about the kind of problems that this has caused for you in the proptech sector in general, and maybe just a little word on the regulation itself that's come in?
So the regulations came in 2019
as
part of the Tenants Fee Act, and it said that the funds needed to be held in a separate account from the business account of a letting agent. So funds weren't misappropriated and the agent didn't misuse the landlord's funds. And we identified that actually, let's separate that out again and put it in an EMI. We did the appropriate due diligence, we spoke to the appropriate people, and they said there wasn't an issue here. And then in January, they re-reviewed it, and actually they identified EMIs are not the appropriate partner. So that meant that we had to stop pretty much where we were. We had to move a lot of clients onto banks, and we had to pivot our platform to adhere to these breakneck changes.
Brilliant. And Adam, I'm just going to come to you. How does Griffin intend to solve the perceived risk problem of taking on proptech companies? And why are incumbent financial institutions, let's say, struggling to work with new types of technology businesses, for example?
Yeah.
Why can't they do it?
I think maybe just to set the scene about some of the problems within the problem, if you like. So as a bank, like, we've built capability to automate the movement of money. But the reason that we became a bank is so that we're authorised to hold client money. There's different types of accounts that we provide at Griffin, but one type of account is designated as client money accounts. And there is large industries, including this property industry, that are legislated to protect client money and keep that money safe, and to do that with banks. So there's nothing new about that. But part of the problem that we're learning about and have learned over the last few months working together is that many banks just don't have the risk management technologies. They have the risk management capacity and expertise, but they don't have the technology to actually manage this risk and to do that on pretty fine margins and to do that at massive scale. So there's something like 6 million residential properties that are rented in this country.
Wow.
Yeah, so quite a significant number. And the number of properties over the last couple of years has exploded. So you've got a market which is changing very, very quickly. You've got an incumbent banking community that don't have the technology that allow a fast-moving industry to scale efficiently. And you've got a bit of a mismatch there on commercial appetite as well, because if a bank can't service an industry at scale and do that cost effectively, they have neither the risk appetite or the commercial appetite. And so that's where there's been a mismatch between, I guess, the bank on the supply side, the servicing side, and what the market needs. And I'd say it's more luck than anything. That just happened to happen at the time when we got our banking license. We put our platform out there, and literally within 2 months of this problem becoming apparent, Garrett called me and we had a chat, and the more we talked, the more we thought, like, this is an obvious thing that we solve together.
Yeah.
So it's what 11FS have been talking about for a long time. Like, these problems are issues with technology, efficiency, scalability, unit economics, all the normal stuff, and you can only solve that when you have focus.
Yeah. And how does having this new technology and a different way of working almost change the relationships that you have with your clients? Because this is like proper embedded finance, right?
Yeah,
that we were talking about before. So, and what is the difference, I think, between the embedded finance that we're talking about here versus something a little bit more white labeled or transactional? What's different about it that makes it special?
So we're actually running an event here at Level 39 today to have a very open conversation with the industry to just talk about what the challenges are. But you can't do embedded banking without embedded risk management. Yeah, these two things have to go hand in hand. And the way that banks have typically worked is they do an assessment of risk of their client and their client's business. They understand that risk, they document that risk, and then they monitor and assess that risk on an ongoing basis. Now, typically that's done with very expensive human beings. So it's not in real time, it's not scalable. It is effective, but it's not cost effective. And so what we've essentially done is built a proprietary technology stack to embed the risk management along with the provision of accounts and payment services from a bank, and brought those two things together.
Got it.
Yeah, and it gets a little bit more complex because in this market, some letting agents are registered with HMRC, and through that registration process, they attest that they have a certain level of financial crime controls and monitoring in place. So we can rely on that to a certain extent, but there are many, many letting agents that haven't got that registration. And so given that we need to open bank accounts for these businesses, like any bank account, you can't open a bank account until you know who the customer is and what the purpose of the account is and where the funds come from and what they're used for.
Yeah.
You can only do that when you've got the right technology.
So it sounds like risk is the real gap almost between embedded finance scaling from, say, digital wallets, for example, into actual banking.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, and also the legislation, however it came about, that a bank had to provide these services. It's not enough to automate the movement of money in any licensed organisation. Yeah. It's become much more specific to say for this industry, it needs to be client money at a bank. and only banks can issue client money accounts. Yeah.
Amazing. Let's talk a little bit about the proptech market as a whole from a customer's perspective, right? So getting on the property ladder, really, really difficult. Interest rates, very high. Inflation remaining high. There's a big problem certainly in the UK with the rights of tenants and the rights of landlords. I'd love to talk about what is next for proptech, particularly if we think about part of the future of proptech being very much aligned with fintech. So I'm going to go to you first, Garrett. Like, what's next for you? What does this partnership bring you, and where do you see proptech going?
So this partnership opens us up to back into the market. We can go and reach out to our clients and say, look, we can streamline your journeys and we can make it more efficient. And we can offer services to the tenants because we communicate to the tenants. We can offer them credit scoring and efficiencies through the tenants. And also we can communicate to landlords and we can offer them to the landlords. And there's some smart features and smart apps out there for the landlords to facilitate that. But the wider market it's dispersed. The regulations come from many different places. They've got the HMRC, they've got Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, and then they've got wider trades bodies that give directives. And then Scotland's totally different to England again. So it's very dispersed. I think the role of proptech is to bring all these regulations in to let the letting agent do what they do best and get them back to work, going out there and working and hitting the streets and getting the landlords and servicing the tenants, and let the tech take all that regulatory requirement off them.
So the tech basically fills that gap over the course of the next few years to automate through a lot of what they're doing. And what's the effect for the end customer on the street who's letting a property? I mean, is it easier therefore for them to onboard into a home, to get due diligence vetted?
Exactly. Why does it take 4 weeks for a tenant to move into a property?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
The landlord wants someone to fill that gap immediately. The tenant wants to get in immediately. Technology can fill that gap and identify the person and move them in.
Brilliant. And Adam, for you, proptech, where's it going?
Just off the back of this focus that we've got, like I said, is affecting 6 million properties at least and will increase. Like, how many people can actually afford to maintain a mortgage for the next 5 years? Probably less than could do 2 or 3 years ago. Yep. So it's only going one way. And so what I'm really interested in is sort of adjacent kind of value pools, because this has to be about businesses creating value. The value has to be felt by and realised by end customers. Yeah. And so I think part of our role is to understand what these value pools are, how we could facilitate holding money and moving money in a safe way, which is why we're a bank, and to do that at scale in an automated fashion. So I'm really interested in these adjacent industries. Could be utilities, power, for example. Yeah. How can you harness the buying power of 6 million, renters? Could be credit. So what's a standard way that tenants could get access to credit in an affordable manner? And it doesn't mean that Griffin has to build all this capability, but no matter what the exchange of value is, there is a movement of funds. And if there's a movement of funds, that happens on the accounts that we're servicing. So that's what I see our role to be, is try and help facilitate the movement of funds in a safe manner across these different trusted endpoints, if you like, within this ecosystem. And as a bank, we create value that other organisations can't, and so we share that value back with our customers. So we pay good interest rates. We want to reward people for working with us. So that's what's new for us. I can't say exactly what it is because we haven't figured it out, to be honest.
It sounds like you're just at the beginning of the journey. Really,
yeah.
Really interesting journey.
Yeah.
And proptech, as we know, is huge and exploding all over the world because all sorts of countries all over the world have very similar problems. It's not just in the UK, in the US, pretty much everywhere. It's very difficult to buy a house. It's very difficult to get vetted. And all of these kind of problems.
There's social housing, which is a totally different set of issues, and you've got build to rent, which is a whole booming new sector, and so lots going on. But I think actually it comes down to just doing really difficult things really, really well at scale, and the right partners working together.
Absolutely. And on that note, let's end by talking a little bit about what's next for you guys. So let's start with you, Adam. What's next for Griffin?
Well, in the context of this, what's next? This is the first time we've run an event ever. Yeah. So we want to tell people about how we're solving real problems and how we partner with organisations. There's some of the challenges that we've identified here, which is around, complex problems around financial crime, for example. And so we want to make those topics very accessible. We want to invest in education. We want to run open webinars. We want to try and help the industry, whether they work with us or not. We really want to try and help. So we'll be focusing more and more on solving this problem and not taking our eye off this particular area, because it needs some help.
It does. Brilliant. Yeah. And Garrett, what's next for LettsPay?
LettsPay, like I say, we're just on the journey with Griffin. It's a starting point.
Yep.
And we're going to launch. And the great thing about Griffin is they're not afraid to help us and sending the message out there. Like, high street banks and other banks in the sector have just not said a word and just not serviced the sector. So it's nice to have a voice for the banks in the sector. Why is this an issue? Why do we have to do the risk assessments and the appropriate risk assessments? That's a fresh voice in the market, which is well deserved and well needed. So we'll be working with Griffin to support this market and expand into the market.
Brilliant. And on that note, that wraps up the show. So let's talk a little bit about where we can find out more about both of you. Adam.
Griffin, go on griffin.com, follow Griffin on LinkedIn. There's a bunch of colleagues that are probably on social media, Twitter and so on. Yep. But griffin.com is the best place to go.
Awesome. And Garrett?
Yeah, letspay.co.uk and Let's Pay on LinkedIn. It's the best place to find all about us.
Right. That's all we have time for this week. Make sure you follow 11FS on LinkedIn, Twitter and Instagram, and of course TikTok, to stay updated with all the cool stuff we're doing. And if you enjoy our show, do subscribe at the 11FS YouTube channel, where you can also catch up on previous episodes. Have a great week, everyone. Goodbye.